Well, believe it or not, most of the time I actually have a decent idea of what I'm generally going to preach about on a given Sunday well in advance of the service. And maybe that's because I'm in the middle of a themed sermon series. If not that, there's a good chance my sermon will be tied to the calendar, inspired by a holiday or some other recurring touchstone in our yearly cycle, such as our flower communion, ingathering, or Justice Sunday. Or maybe I'm preaching a sermon that has just been purchased by a congregant at the service auction. The point is, it's actually a fairly rare occurrence that I ever come upon a Sunday where I really have little guidance about what to preach about. And this just happens to be one of those Sundays. And on Sundays like this, I often hearken back to a bit of advice, a little bit of wisdom that I've heard from several different ministerial colleagues and mentors. Preach the sermon you yourself need to hear. So, it's been a really rough week. So much has been lost. On Monday, 52 Palestinians in Gaza needlessly lost their lives. On Friday, 8 families in Santa Fe, Texas suffered the most horrific loss imaginable. This community too, this church, is experiencing a season of tremendous loss. Monday is when I first learned that we had lost Alice Ricker to cancer. Thursday, at her memorial service, we said goodbye to Missy James right here in this sanctuary. Friday, I took a moment to look over an email that detailed some plans for Afesha Adams' memorial service, which is scheduled for June. As a community, we laid Clarence Sears to rest barely a month ago. And if I'm being really honest, I am personally still pretty raw about having lost Nancy Rathenauer in February. If you know me, you know that I actually, for a minister, don't pray a lot for a variety of reasons. But this week I did find myself uttering a prayer. Dear God, please stop for just a second. There's this really beautiful and poignant quote that has been floating around the internet since about 2014. It's from a blogger named Jamie Anderson, and Jamie wrote this: "Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers up in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and in the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go." This community right now has a whole lot of love that no longer has a place to go. I'll share something with you this morning. On my computer, I have an electronic file called Memorial Services. And every time I'm called upon to officiate a memorial service, I open that file and create within it a new document. And the title of that new document is the name of the individual who has just passed away. And every time I create a new document, I take a moment to read every name in that file. In the relatively short time that I've spent as pastor of this church, I have officiated over or otherwise participated in some way in 17 memorial services, with 2 more scheduled soon, Afesha's and Alice's. That's a lot of goodbyes in under 5 years. And actually, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Death is but one way that we lose a loved one. it's only one reason among many that forces us to say goodbye to another person. Sometimes, for very good reasons, good people leave you. Like maybe they quit their job and moved to Portland, Oregon. Or maybe you just drift apart. You know, they start following a different star, worshiping a different god. Or maybe you have to leave them because you wake up one morning and realize that maybe they've been slowly, unwittingly poisoning you for years. Maybe you find a dagger in your back and realize that you have been betrayed. Relationships end. All relationships end. That was my epiphany this week. Every relationship in your life is going to end someday or some way, whether by death or some other means. In the end, everyone will leave you or you will leave them. And it will hurt. So how do we do it? Why do we do it? Why and how do we keep opening our hearts to others, loving people, engaging in deep relationships when in the back of our minds, in the deepest chambers of our hearts, we know it is all going to end in tears? I don't have an answer. But this week, I recognize that I do have a source of inspiration that compels me to keep moving forward. Now, as many of you know, a while back, I spent about a year volunteering twice a week at a place called L'Arche, Jacksonville. L'Arche is a community where individuals with intellectual and physical disabilities live and work side by side with non-disabled people. I often like to share with people the mission statement that appears on L'Arche's website because I just find it so beautiful and moving. It goes like this. We believe that by creating an environment where people with intellectual and physical disabilities can share their gifts, we are affecting a positive change in the world. We believe that these shared gifts have the power to transform the lives of those who are open to receiving them. We celebrate the unique value of every person and recognize our need for one another. We resolve to explore and appreciate the diverse cultures and faith practices within L'Arche and to work together toward a more evolved and caring human society. The time that I spent volunteering at L'Arche Jacksonville was a transformative experience for me. I learned so very, very much. And so perhaps it's not surprising that during this particularly difficult week, I personally found my spirit buoyed by thinking back to the friends that I made at L'Arche, and specifically in recalling the incredible resiliency that they demonstrate every time they have to say goodbye to someone that they love, which is quite often. Now you see, every house at L'Arche is like a little family. It's beautiful. And in every house at L'Arche, there are core members. These are permanent residents who have varying disabilities. Then there are assistants who also live or work with the core members, and some of them are fairly stable. That is to say, they're there for a long-term basis. But some of the other assistants are intentionally short-term. These are often young people, recent college graduates perhaps, who have chosen to spend a year or two living at L'Arche, experiencing communal, simple living with differently abled individuals. At the end of their time there, these assistants often move on and away, perhaps to start a career or to begin a family. So year after year after year, these young people come and go, come and go, come and go, in much the same way that I came and went. The core members of L'Arche, many of them have been there for years, decades even. And just about every year, their house, their little family unit, it changes. They gain new family, but they also lose others. And they deal with this loss regularly and repeatedly. So truly, they are the experts when it comes to saying goodbye. Now, you might think that this arrangement would set them up to get really hard inside, maybe to be bitter towards those who constantly leave, to be resistant towards those new ones coming in. I mean, why share your life and heart with someone who is going to leave you in such a short time? At least I know that would be my natural inclination. Here's confession time. In my neighborhood, the house right next door to mine is a rental. And every year, it seems, Sonny and I get new neighbors. Now, for like the first 3 years of living there, I'd always go over there when the new neighbors came. We brought some banana bread, I shook their hands, I took the time to learn their names. But by year 4 or 5, honestly, I have now given up. I don't want to make friends with them because I know that after just a few months, I'm never going to see them again. So what's the point? Emotionally holding back from people whom you have no guarantee will be around long, that's rational, right? But L'Arche folks aren't exactly the most rational people on earth, which frankly is why I admire them so very, very much. They are so much better than me when it comes to loving people. L'Arche residents, in spite of knowing that many of their relationships will be short-lived, they bond so naturally and love so freely. They allow healthy attachments to be born, to take root, to grow and blossom naturally. They don't withhold their heart from the new people ever coming into their lives. And when the time does come to say goodbye, painful though it may be, they do so with a grace and with a dignity and with no hint of resentment or bitterness. I really think that that kind of love is the prerequisite for beloved community. I want to live like that. I want to love like that. I want to love fearlessly. I want to love extravagantly. I want to love without reservation. I want to find the courage and the strength to open up my heart and live vulnerably in this world, knowing full well how bad it's going to hurt in the end. We cannot live our lives simply trying to avoid getting hurt. Pain avoidance must not be our North Star. Love requires the courage to risk getting hurt. But all that said, more often than not, when you think about it, love is usually a risk that pays off. Since I joined this community, I have helped lay to rest at least 17 people. If I had not joined this church, I would never have gone to 17 funerals in 5 years. But when I look at it, on balance, what I have gained in terms of relationships far outweighs the grief. I used to have only one grandmother in my life. Now I've got like 10. I'm an only child. That is, I used to be. Now I have more brothers and sisters and siblings than I can count. I used to have only 2 daughters. Now I have like a dozen children. And I know that I'm not the only one here that can say that. It is an experience that I would not trade for anything. In other words, it is worth the heartache. There is a famous line about love and loss that in popular usage has often been misunderstood and misapplied as an axiom relating to romance. In 1850, Alfred Lord Tennyson published a long poem entitled In Memoriam. It was an elegy, a requiem, expressing Tennyson's heartbreak over the tragic death of his friend Arthur Hallam. In the poem, reflecting on his friend's untimely passing, Tennyson weighs the cost of grief against the benefit of love and friendship. And he concludes thusly, I hold it true, whate'er befall. I feel it, when I sorrow most. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I am a better person because I knew Alice Ricker. My life is more full for having known Afesha Adams. It was a blessing to have met Missy James. I and my ministry have been inspired by having met Clarence Sears and learning how he fought racists in 1960. I am grateful to have had the honor of loving and having been loved by Nancy Rattenauer. But I would have missed all of those blessings had I been too scared to pledge myself to this covenanted community and open my heart to my fellow congregants. And that's why I will continue to open my heart to every new person who walks through those doors. A wise young man by the name of Tyler Burley this week reminded me, all relationships end, but we can't let the fear of saying goodbye stop us from saying hello. Love is scary. Love will hurt. But I can't imagine a life worth living without it. And I hope that you can't either. I think that this is the sermon that I needed to hear this morning. And so in that spirit, my closing charge is for all of us, including myself. Little children, love one another. Love one another. Blessed be. I invite you to rise and bow to your